travel day from San Antonio to Houston. The rest of my crew's flying in from California, and they've got most of the equipment. So I only had to check one Pelican, and I carried on my battery bag, and I'm actually waiting to collect the California bags that came in on a flight from Phoenix. Well, our producer went to the airport, but decided to not get on the plane. He was feeling pretty sick, and it was getting worse as the morning wore on. So running solo on the setup for this leg, no problem. We had a little extra time to set up. And I wish I had timed how long this took me to sort out, but I think all in it took me about 30 minutes. First time I've had to assemble all these kit stands on this travel show. And I did build the overhead cutter, even though all the lights are off up top. There is one light kind of in the foreground where the time-lapse camera is positioned. You can see it on my head right there. So this cider actually acted more as the overhead cutter as well as negative fill. This business, like so many the past 4 years, has most of its staff now working from home. So I get these big, expansive offices with not a whole lot of background activity. But I always strive to have a bunch of open space behind my subject instead of being in a little conference room or an office and shooting in an f2 on a 50 mil. It's nice and soft and out of focus. Past few jobs, I've been saving screenshots of interview setups, and I'll go over some of those coming up here in this video, so stick around. We were wrapped by 1300 and a nice fancy lunch at a Brazilian steakhouse, and yearly we were the only customers. Downtown Houston, just took a nap. I think it's 8 o'clock in the evening. I want to go work out at the gym before I have a late dinner. But first, previous shoot in San Antonio, I wanted to keep my airline kit in airline mode in that case, and that case were in California. I had these two with me. So the only thing I pulled from the travel kit was the FX9 or FX3 and the Ronin S. And I cursed myself in the last vlog post. I was talking about how I've had this for 4 years. It works great. I've had no need to replace it. And well, I put this in a little Home Depot, like a soft tool bag, to transport it on the shoot locally in San Antonio, and it was just on the top of some Pelicans on the rock and roller. I wheeled the cart out when we were loading out safely, but I walked away from the cart, and as the guys were packing the truck, it got bumped or something. The tool bag rolled off the cart. The zipper was blown out on the tool bag, so cascade of fails. This fell out of the tool bag and landed, I assume, right on the recenter button. So it punched this plastic button in. It was jammed in all the way. So on the B-roll shoot today, I borrowed a screwdriver on location, a little jeweler's screwdriver, and I was able to pop this button out. It wasn't functional, but it was engaged. I was at least able to disengage it to get all my B-roll today. And now, if I can't get that, I think I need some sandpaper really to get the roughness out of the button from kissing the pavement. But if I can't do that, this little contact switch appears to be intact, and I can get my finger in there. So that may be the fix to extend the lifespan of this thing. I wrap up this show this week, and then next week I've got a shoot in Mexico with the same rig. I could potentially purchase, ship, and have in time a new gimbal kit, but I'm so apprehensive to new things and learning on jobs. I'd rather have a little more time with it to get it all sorted, particularly switching to a new follow focus system and all the accessory cables and spare batteries and the whole bit. So anyway, I got this all dismantled. Fortunately, I had some basic hand tools with me. All right, I just figured out the button's okay, but the metal here at the bottom, you can see it's crowning a bit. It actually dented up this frame. So I think if I had a hammer, I could tap on the screwdriver and coax that. I don't have a hammer, but maybe that battery will work. All right, success. I put this on the floor on the carpet to pound on it with the battery. Credit to DJI for making some robust metallic equipment. All right, look at this. Good button action. Save some money. That's twice this has fallen. Once it fell off my tool chest in the van. I put it behind the FX9 and forgot it was up there and drove off, and it fell to the floor, and I forget what I broke. I think a USB cable on the focus motor that time. This time, fortunately, the camera was not mounted. The camera was safely cased in the think tank bag. It was just the gimbal in a tool bag, unzipped. So when I get home, I'm gonna throw away that tool bag with the failed zipper. And yeah, my bad, I should have never transported this not securely in a case. Credit to Beck for designing and 3D printing a case for the Barano touchscreen. I didn't realize Mid-49 has a clip-on cover available. You can download the design or purchase already printed, but that was good to give my son a project. I think mine's actually, I prefer Beck's design for my purposes. This dropped in an airline case because it better encloses on all sides. The EVF, the Mid-49, it looks like it just has a lip around the backside to clip on. And then he did a good job with this. Beck left open a little finger hole here to push the screen out, and then there are these little runners, these rails, so that the screen is not in contact with the cap. I threw this design up, it's a free download. If you go to the Facebook Barano user group, I posted on there with a link to download, and I'll put a link in the description also if there's any Barano users. I wanted Beck to put like a boat cleat on the backside to wrap the cable, but I had saturated his patience with this design, so maybe on a 2.0, or if someone else wants to modify the design and send it back to me with a way to retain the cable, because I still worry that this tucked in the Trek pack, if this gets inspected by airline security folks, TSA, there's still a risk that this will get pinched in the lid when it closes. Still in Houston, 7 a.m. Today's a travel day. I should have looked better at the schedule. As it turns out, we wrapped at 1 yesterday. It took almost 6 hours to get from my house to the hotel flying. I could have driven directly to the hotel on Sunday in 3.5 hours and brought my son to help out to stand in for Scott. So instead, I got all day today off. I think we check out at 11 a.m., but our flight's not till 6:45 p.m. Our hotel has train tracks on 3 sides of the building. So noisy. The Barano's been great on the road. It's so compact after years of flying around with the Amira and then the FX9. I like just having just the screen, a prime lens, and a battery. I get through each day with just 2 bricks, which is a new record for me. 1 for the camera, 1 for the key light, newer panel, and they're like less than half depleted when we wrap. And I think I should be sponsored by Newer. Like my whole grip electric kit on this show is from Amazon. I should add the interview is only like 50% of our day. The other half is on the FX3 with the gimbal running around. But even there, I'm only going through 1 or 2 Sony batteries and 1 gimbal battery. No client monitor on these, which speeds things along as well, because we've got our look. Everyone trusts everybody to complete their task on the show. And the reset button worked just like new. Updated my website about a year ago. New design, super simplified. This is just Google Sites. Prior to this, I had hired a designer, and I had more of a production company oriented messaging, even though I'm just a DP owner operator that can hire additional lighting and sound crew. I want to just get back to my roots. I don't use my website to market. Really the only thing it's used for is if I get a referral and they just want to validate I've got some experience, I'm not a total hack, they can look at the site and see I've got some work experience. And then I also will often text the gear pages to clients, like shoot in my previous vlog where we did the 2 FX9s with the PL zooms for interviews. That shoot, the producer asked what I had for lenses. I was on the road. I was actually rolling on an interview. So I just texted him like, here's my camera page of cameras and lenses. Just let me know what you want to use and we'll price it out and make it happen. So I added this recently, and I wish I had done this years ago, just screenshots from interviews. These are all just your standard frame size, 2-button, 3-button. I wish I had from my 25 plus years body of work. I've shot some interesting non-standard compositions, things that look great. I didn't save any of it. Stuff's I've forgotten more than I remember. But going forward, I want to start saving notable interviews or things that are frequently repeatable. so that I can present these to new clients. I find this helps a lot just when I'm tech scouting a location and they want to put you in that dreaded conference room, small box with a giant table, and they don't understand the expansive space thing works to your benefit. I can just I pull this up on my iPhone. I have these saved also in a folder in my photo album on my phone. I can be like, see, this is what your lobby would look like. This is what the cube area would look like. Let's do something like this. And then they get it. So most of these grabs are from this award show I've been working on since 2016. So 2 years ago, I got a little bit of client pushback that I'd gone too contrasty on the key fill ratio with my subjects. So in 2022, we went too flat, which are these bottom two. These are a Mira on a 35 mm f2.0. This gentleman here is 2023, Newark, New Jersey, and this was FX9 50 mm on a 2.0 full frame. And I was able to get back into having some ratio here. I guess I think I did two things the year prior. My key light was more to the side, so I had a lot more. I still had both eyes illuminated, but the shadow side of the face was much more in the shadow, if that makes sense. And this is just 5-in-1 reflector on the side, on the shiny black. And those 5-in-1s, the newer, or the ones I have, they certainly don't absorb as much light as a standard piece of duvetine, like a 4x flag. For traveling on the road, something that folds up into a small circle, my alternative would be to have no grip on a travel show like this. And then I've got the biggest size I can carry in a 16-15 rigged overhead, white side facing down. Got the grill going, had to rotate the potatoes. So on this gentleman, on all of these interviews so far, it's 5-in-1 reflector, white side facing down overhead. Biggest one I can carry in a 16-15, and I tie a piece of sash around it to distort it into an oval, so I can carry a one that's a little bit bigger than what would stock fit in a 16-15. But even in those situations, depending on how big the room is and how much overhead lighting is on that I don't have control over, I'll still get these little kicks, particularly on the men that have got more of a receding hairline. You can really see it on this guy here. This was in Los Angeles 2 years ago. That's a Mira. That's FX9. It's interesting, too, that, that was the year on the Mira where we were, they wanted a flatter look, and I think I went too flat. And everyone's happy this year, last 2 years. This was 2023, and we're going to get to the subjects I shot in the last 3 weeks coming up. This gentleman in Jacksonville, Florida, same setup, newer panel through a Shimira as a key, newer white side overhead, and then a black newer 5-in-1 for negative fill. And then all of these interviews, this one I may have set up a backlight, that little shoulder glow, but for the most part, I try to position the overhead so it's cutting any overhead lighting from the subject's head or forehead specifically. But I do like having some of that overhead lighting rimming their shoulders and even their head if I can get away with it. I'm in general not a fan of the kicker light on interviews, that like rim light, backlight that's on the opposite side from the key. I like it with longer hairstyles, a typical woman interview when it's rimming their hair, but I don't like it with shorter haircuts where that rim light is spilling onto their cheek because it messes up this nice key fill ratio that I've curated. And I'd be okay with it maybe if it were consistent, but as they're moving their heads and speaking, that like rim is moving all over the cheek area, and I just not a fan of it. Like I said, unless there's hair. And I do a lot of interviews where that's what my clients ask for, and I'm happy to give it to them. But I always start by default with a backlight armed out on the center line, and I'm looking for a little bit of shoulder wrap, which you'll see. This is a great example. This was from the last 6 months with my son. So this is a newer panel armed over. Still have the topper cut in the office lighting. I wanted to leave the overhead lighting on here in the lobby to illuminate the background. And in this case, we had two Aperture 60Xs kicking onto this built-in cabinet and these plaques. I think the other one might have been on the flag here with that hard shadow. I like this amount of shoulder wrap when I can pull it off. With a travel kit and no C-stand arm, it's a little more difficult. Here are two interviews from a feature package I shot a couple weeks ago. It aired last weekend. And you can see the opposite side framing on these is intentional for this circuit. That's how they like to frame their features. Happy to do it. It's fun to do something a little different and shoot for television. So versus corporate, where I get to do these like tighter frames. Even the wide is tighter. Backing up here. So this was one of my first Barano shoots. The wide is a 50 mil on the Barano f2. The close-ups FX9 f2. I think this was shot in S-Log, and then this is just the standard 709 Sony LED applied, and I pulled these screen captures in Catalyst Browse. These gentlemen, this was Barano is the wider 50 mil FX9 85 mil close-up, also f2 across all of it. These were shot in Cinetone. Even though this went to a colorist, at the time we shot it, producer wasn't sure if they were going to have time to send it out to color. So we shot Cinetone in the event that it went straight to air. And I've done that a bunch of times for this client, and they've got their workflow figured out. I love working with people in television, the producers in television, that have to churn out one or multiple packages every week. Things are buttoned down. We shoot so fast. They know how to stage their question to elicit an answer, where corporate tends to be so like legalized and word salatized that the question's so complex, you don't get the answer, the desired answer out of the person. All right, moving on to the award show from this year. This is my last 3 weeks flying all over the country. So same key fill ratio as last year. And this bottom right, this was Denver, and I was able to keep all the overhead lighting off our gentlemen. This was in a conference room, or more of a classroom, big space with lots of tables. The office area was just, it was all high cube, so like 5 foot tall cubes. There was no view and no people to see. Left side, this was Lansing, Michigan, a government building, also a classroom type area. They were cool with me shooting anywhere, and the building was full of people. And I would have loved to have people in the background, but all of their cubes were the same thing, high cube, no good views. So I did get occasional office staff walking through the windows in the background, which I love. These interviews in particular, these are managers. They're talking about building the right teams, managing people, keeping them motivated to innovate, and having these sterile, expansive office spaces with no other signs of life runs so contrary to what they're talking about. That's another reason I like to have them out in spaces. It's been really difficult since 2020 shooting this type of content because it seems like everybody is working from home now and they just come into the office for the interview, which has been the case on this show since 2020. This gentleman was our last shoot. This was actually yesterday. Feels like a week's gone by, but I flew home the night of the interview. This was Columbus, Ohio. This was in like a sales demo room. They had all kinds of products and screens and stuff. It looked great. And these are windows into hallways, so I did get some foot traffic back there throughout the interview. Overhead, they had architectural can lights versus the square fluorescence, so very toppy and pingy, particularly with this guy's hairline. But fortunately, my overhead cut all of it. Another thing I do on my travel kits, and a reason I like that little Octava cardioid mic is it's super short, and I do need to add a right angle connector to my boom pole to make it even shorter, but I float that overhead down so that the mic is on the edge of frame, and then the overhead is essentially touching the backside of the mic, because in my travel kit I'm size limited on the overhead, so having a smaller mic makes a huge difference. Like it's the difference between an additional row of fluorescent lighting in the background getting flagged or not. This gentleman, Clearwater, Florida, from last week. So in this case, with his hairline and all the fluorescence back there, I could not cut everything, and this bugged me the whole interview, these pings. I was successful keeping my Shimura off all these eyeglasses. Occasionally with like, if their head drops or they look to their right, I'd catch it a little bit, but not too offensive. But I would say this one's my weakest setup from a lighting and grip perspective, and it was just all I could do in the moment. And the negative fill side is also cutting several lights that were pinging on this side of his head, but you can see one of the ones behind him was still getting through, and everything's on the edge of frame. I was to the extent of what I could do with the kit I had available and time, and this was the best background by a long shot. Curved wall, which looked nice, and I was trying to minimize the carpet but showcase all of these openings and blue daylight spilling in, so that's why I positioned him frame right. Backing up, there's this woman from Los Angeles. This room, interestingly enough, this building was, I don't know if it was all the seasons or just the first season of The Mandalorian were filmed in this building, But I realized as soon as I started rolling on this one, I wish I had positioned her frame left looking right, so this staircase was in the negative space versus all this carpet. But fortunately, the carpet's got these lines and texture to it, so somewhat visually interesting versus like this guy's carpet over here. This is Columbus, Ohio last year, Nationwide Insurance and their high-rise. Another work-from-home situation, so had low cubes or no cubes, just tables, work tables, but no workers to feature. And this year, I think this was the only interview we got with a full staff in the background. So get tables, people working, lots of foot traffic walking through. I love all of that because this guy has a huge staff, and that was what the interview was about, managing team. And we get to see team members in the background. That's what I'm all about with these interviews. All right, we'll wrap this up here. Next week, we'll go over the 3.5 minute feature package from this bull riding shoot. Looking forward to it. Let's continue this discussion in the comments below. Thanks.